Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Intimacy Lab. Have you ever wondered what happens in a woman's mind, day by day, after you disappear? Maybe you've gone silent, maybe you've withdrawn without a word, or maybe life simply pushed you out of her daily orbit. You might think that silence is just silence, that absence is emptiness, but it isn't, it's alive. It's loud, it has shape and color and texture in her mind, and it changes with each passing day. What you don't see, what you can't see, is that when you vanish, something begins inside her. A private dialogue she has only with herself, a series of questions that morph from curiosity to confusion, from longing to anger, from nostalgia to a haunting acceptance. It's not just that she misses you or doesn't, it's that your absence becomes a story she tells herself over and over as each day unfolds. In today's video, we're going to sit quietly together and trace that journey. We'll explore how absence, your absence, speaks louder than presence sometimes does. We'll look at what she really thinks, not just the clichés you hear from friends or the advice columns you read. This is intimate, this is emotional, and this is real, so take a deep breath, settle in, because we're about to travel through her mind day by day after you disappear. Have you ever wondered what happens in a woman's mind day by day after you disappear? Maybe you've gone silent, maybe you've withdrawn without a word, or maybe life simply pushed you out of her daily orbit. You might think that silence is just silence, that absence is emptiness, but it isn't, it's alive. It's loud, it has shape and color and texture in her mind, and it changes with each passing day. When you disappear, the first day feels like static. The noise of life is still all around her, messages from work, casual chats with friends, plans for the evening, but somewhere in the background, the silence between you and her is already humming. On day one, she probably gives you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you're busy, maybe you need space, maybe you're distracted. The modern woman, after all, is conditioned to be understanding, to be patient, to tell herself that not everything requires a response immediately. So she lets it go almost casually, but even as she lets it go, a tiny seed of uncertainty is planted. A little doubt that wasn't there before, and this is important. Women, by nature, tend to interpret silence relationally. Silence is not neutral to her. It means something, even when you insist that it doesn't. Your absence is already starting to write a story in her mind. A woman's sensitivity to relational rhythms is different from yours. While you might feel that a pause in communication is normal, maybe even necessary, she begins, even if unconsciously, to monitor that space. She feels the pause as a presence of its own. As day two arrives, that seed begins to grow roots. She wakes up and notices your absence more acutely now. She's checked her phone once, twice, maybe even scrolled back to your last message to read it again. Did she miss something? Did she say something wrong? She wonders if you're angry or tired or simply indifferent. And even if she's strong, even if she's independent and busy, this question sits with her as she goes about her day. It's in the way she stirs her coffee, in the empty glance at her screen, in the way she holds herself during that one quiet moment between meetings. At this point, curiosity still dominates. She might be concerned, even caring. Perhaps she gives you the benefit of the doubt again. Maybe your workload is heavy. Maybe something unexpected happened. Maybe you're overwhelmed and don't know how to express it. You see, she is still on your side. Her mind is weaving a generous narrative about you, defending you even in your absence. But the silence is gaining volume. By day three, the shift begins. Something subtle but critical happens now. Her mind starts turning inward. Instead of asking what's going on with you, she begins asking what this means for her. Was she too much? Did she seem too eager? Too emotional? Was she too vulnerable the last time you spoke? You might not realize this, but many women carry with them an internalized story that says, don't want too much, don't feel too much, don't ask too much. It's not a rule they consciously follow, but it's a cultural script they've absorbed since childhood. And so she's now reviewing her behavior, not just from this week, but maybe even from the beginning of your connection. And here's where the emotional temperature rises inside her. On the outside, she might look perfectly composed. She's at work, at the gym, making plans with friends. But there's an emotional thread running underneath everything she does, replaying moments, words, glances, jokes, even those silences that once felt comfortable when you were together. That thread is tightening slightly with each day that you remain gone. By day 4, her curiosity has transformed into something more complicated, vulnerability mixed with self-protection. She still thinks of you, but now she's starting to think about herself more. Maybe this has happened to her before. Maybe she's been left hanging like this by another man, another relationship, another silent departure that felt like it came out of nowhere. This isn't just about you anymore. Your absence has triggered a history, a series of emotional memories where she felt ghosted, abandoned, misunderstood, or unseen. In these moments, your silence is not just yours, it's amplified by every time in her life when she's been left without closure. The conversation she's having internally now is less about where you are and more about how she can protect her own heart from falling too deeply into the same pattern again. And yet she still wonders. The beauty of the feminine psyche is that it holds contradiction effortlessly. She can feel anger and tenderness at the same time. She can miss you and resent you simultaneously. She can hope that you will return, even as she starts rehearsing what she might say when you do. There's a complexity in her emotions that grows richer, more layered as the days pass. By day 5, she might appear distant if you were to reach out now, but inside she is anything but detached. She's tired of checking her phone, tired of explaining your absence to herself or anyone else. At this point, her imagination might be running wild. Was it something she said? Did you meet someone else? Are you testing her? Or worse, do you simply not care? She's questioning everything now, not just you, but her own instincts, her own ability to read signs, to trust what she felt between you. This is the part that most men miss entirely. Your silence is not neutral to her. It's writing a chapter in the story of how she perceives herself, not just how she perceives you. And so, as the days go on, her emotional landscape is shifting quickly from curiosity to self, doubt to sadness, to the first touches of anger. But here's the nuance. The anger is not a rejection of you, not yet. It's an attempt to reclaim her emotional center, to restore a balance that your disappearance has disturbed, and this reclaiming is what gives her the strength to continue without needing to chase you. By now, we are watching her move from emotional dependence on your response to emotional independence. It's fragile at first. She might still glance at her phone now and then, still wonder when or if you'll reappear. But her internal narrative is adjusting. You're no longer the main character in her emotional world. Her absence of you is teaching her something about herself, about her own capacity to self-soothe, to self-reflect, and if necessary, to let go. Let's pause here, because the days ahead will bring even more subtle shifts in how she thinks, feels, and imagines you even as you remain silent. And as she enters day 6, something almost imperceptible happens. She begins to adjust. Not because she's stopped caring, not because she has suddenly become immune to your absence, but because a woman's mind knows how to survive disappointment. Her nervous system has been carrying the weight of uncertainty for nearly a week now, and there comes a moment when it quietly shifts towards self-preservation. You see, the human psyche has this incredible ability to adapt when an answer doesn't come. When silence stretches too long, she will fill in the blanks, not with what's true, because she doesn't know, but with what feels necessary so she can keep functioning. At this stage, she might stop checking her phone as often. That silence that felt like an ache only a few days ago now becomes part of the background noise. She's no longer waiting minute by minute, hour by hour. She's learning how to integrate this unanswered question into her daily rhythm. But that doesn't mean she's indifferent, far from it. Indifference takes much longer to arrive. What she's experiencing now is a conscious effort to redirect her focus. By day 7, the narrative in her mind has begun to harden. It's no longer just a question of where you went or why you vanished. It's becoming a story she tells herself about what she deserves. She may think, I deserve a man who values communication, or I deserve consistency, clarity, and presence. These phrases may sound simple to you, but for her, they are declarations of self-worth. Your absence has forced her into a negotiation with her own standards. And whether she liked it or not, your silence has become a mirror reflecting back what she will and will not tolerate. At this point, she may talk to friends about you, not because she wants their advice necessarily, but because talking helps her process emotions out loud. You might be surprised how often those conversations are not simply about you as a person, but about the way you've made her feel. She's trying to understand her own emotional response more than she's trying to analyze your motives. She's asking herself, why does this silence affect me this way? Why does this feel familiar or unfamiliar? What part of me is so triggered by this disappearance? This is where a woman's mind becomes both vulnerable and powerful. Vulnerable because she's letting herself feel the full spectrum of disappointment, sadness, anger, longing, questioning, but powerful because she's processing it instead of running from it. That emotional intelligence allows her to metabolize her experience even while she's still hurting. By day 8 or 9, the space where you once lived inside her mind starts to shrink just a little. This doesn't mean she's forgotten you. It means she's reclaiming real estate in her emotional life. She's busy again, but this time with more intention. The activities she immerses herself in, meeting with friends, taking a yoga class, investing time in her work, these aren't distractions in the shallow sense. They are acts of restoration. They help her remember that her identity was never solely tied to your presence. She's rebuilding that sense of wholeness that might have felt shaken when you left without explanation. Still, even in this period of reclaiming, your shadow lingers. When a song comes on that reminds her of you, when she passes by a restaurant where you once sat together, when she catches herself laughing at a memory, she feels a flicker of softness. It's a nostalgia that tugs at her heart, even as her mind is trying to move forward. This is the paradox of attachment. She can feel both her independence rising and her tenderness remaining, side by side. But by now, there's also a growing determination in her thoughts. She begins to think about boundaries. Even if you return, she knows now that something has changed. The trust, the innocence, the carefree rhythm you shared, they have all been interrupted by this stretch of silence. She may already be asking herself, would I let him back in so easily? Could I trust him the same way? What would I need from him to feel safe again? These are not questions born of bitterness. They are born of clarity. Absence clarifies. By day 10, her memory of you has become something different. It's not that she doesn't think of you. She does, but now it's framed in a different emotional context. You're no longer the fantasy of what could be. You're the reality of what wasn't. She's starting to recognize the mismatch between her hopes and your actions. And that mismatch is painful, but it's also liberating, because in recognizing that dissonance, she begins to free herself from it. And as she moves through these days, there's a quiet pride that begins to build inside her, pride that she didn't chase you, pride that she didn't beg for explanations that might have only hurt more. Pride that she allowed herself to feel everything, the confusion, the ache, the anger without running away from it or numbing it out. She has honored her own emotional process, and that alone has begun to restore her sense of dignity. You see, by this point, what she thinks about you is no longer just about you. It's about how your absence has shown her where she stands with herself. Every day she spends navigating your silence is a day. She is slowly reclaiming her narrative. And by day 11, she's living with a new awareness that love is not just about what we feel for another person, but about how that love makes us feel about ourselves. At this stage, you might still be silent, thinking that your absence has gone unnoticed or that time will erase your impact. But for her, every day that you don't reach out is shaping her emotional landscape in ways you cannot see. It's helping her construct new boundaries, re-examine her needs, and define her expectations. And in a strange way, your silence has become a teacher not about you, but about her own capacity for resilience. And even if you were to return tomorrow, even if you were to explain everything perfectly, even if your reasons made perfect sense, she knows now that something fundamental has shifted inside her. The woman who waited for you on day 1 is not the woman who wakes up on day 11. By day 12, there is something quietly different about how she holds herself. Your absence, which felt so heavy in the first few days, now feels lighter. Not because the questions have been answered, they haven't, but because she has decided she doesn't need them answered in order to move forward. That is the subtle power of this point in her journey. She no longer feels held hostage by your silence. She's begun to claim emotional agency again. Even as you remain absent, she has been present, fully present with herself. She has sat with her confusion, her longing, herself, doubt, her memories of closeness. She has touched all of those places inside her with tenderness and sometimes tears. And because she didn't rush through them, because she didn't deny what she felt, she is now standing on stronger emotional ground. You see, this is the paradox of disappearance. When you leave without explanation, when you retreat into silence, a woman is forced to become her own interpreter, her own comforter, her own closure. At first, she searches for answers in you, waiting for your text, hoping for your call, wondering what you're thinking, but eventually, when those answers don't come, she begins to give them to herself. By day 13, her reflections have taken on a new tone. She's thinking not just about why you disappeared, but about what kind of relationship she truly wants. Was this relationship giving her what she needed, or was she investing in a hope, an illusion, a potential that wasn't fully real? She's asking herself deeper questions now, questions about emotional safety, consistency, reciprocity. And these aren't questions driven by insecurity anymore. They're questions born from growing self-awareness. At this point, she's probably stopped mentioning you to friends as often. When they ask, she might just smile gently and say, "I haven't heard from him." And she doesn't feel the need to explain further because something inside her understands. Your absence is no longer defining her days. It is still a thread in her emotional tapestry, but it's no longer the central thread. By day 14, she's begun to rewrite the story of you, not to vilify you, not to romanticize you, but simply to reframe you. She's remembering the moments you were fully present, the times you made her laugh, the way you looked at her when everything felt new and effortless, and she's holding those memories with gratitude, but also with a recognition that they are not the full story. The full story includes this chapter of silence too. And she can't pretend that chapter doesn't exist. She won't allow herself to edit out the parts that don't fit the fantasy. This is a quiet revolution inside her mind. She is reclaiming narrative control. The version of you she once cherished is being integrated into a broader, more honest picture. And this integration gives her a new kind of freedom, not freedom from pain, but freedom from confusion. She no longer needs to wonder what she did wrong or how she could have prevented this. Instead, she's beginning to understand that sometimes people leave because of their own emotional limitations, not because of anything she did. By day 15, there's a grace that begins to infuse her thoughts, a grace toward herself first and foremost. She sees that she allowed herself to feel deeply, to trust, to hope, and she doesn't shame herself for that anymore. In fact, she honors it, because to love is to risk, to be open is to be vulnerable, and she knows she would rather live with that vulnerability than close herself off completely. And if she thinks about you now, it's different. She's no longer checking her phone late at night or crafting imaginary texts she might send if only she had the right words. Instead, she might simply pause for a moment and feel a gentle ache, but then she exhales and keeps moving forward. The emotional weight has shifted. The silence that once occupied so much space in her mind has shrunk to something she can hold in her palm, still present, still meaningful, but no longer overwhelming. By day 16, if you were to return, you might find a version of her that surprises you, a woman who is softer and stronger at the same time. Softer because she's no longer fighting her feelings, stronger because she's no longer captive to them. She has learned how to sit with discomfort without needing immediate resolution. She has learned that sometimes closure doesn't come from the other person, it comes from within. And even though she might still feel something for you, affection, tenderness, curiosity, she also feels something deeper for herself now, respect. Respect for the way she navigated these days of silence without abandoning her own heart. Respect for the way she held space for her emotions without collapsing under their weight. Respect for the way she allowed herself to be human. By day 17, she's no longer looking backward quite so often. Her gaze is beginning to turn toward the future again, not necessarily toward a new relationship right away, but toward her own life, her own passions, friendships, goals, and pleasures. The absence that once felt like a wound is now starting to feel like a doorway back to herself, and yet if you were to call, if you were to send a message even now, she might respond. But it wouldn't be the response you expect. It would be a response from this new place she's reached, calm, clear, measured. She would not rush to fill the silence with explanations or apologies. She would not demand answers with urgency. She would listen, but she would also evaluate not just what you say, but how she feels hearing it. Because by this point she's attuned to her own body, her own intuition, her own sense of self-worth. This is the evolution that happens inside her mind, day by day, after you disappear. It is not linear. Some days she might still ache unexpectedly. Some days she might feel a twinge of anger or a flood of nostalgia. But overall, she is moving in a direction that is healing, self-restorative, and self-affirming. Her thoughts about you are no longer static, they are fluid. They rise and fall like waves, but the tide is turning, and the turning of that tide is not against you, it's toward herself. By day 18, she begins to feel the landscape of her emotional life widening. There's more space now, not because she's erased you, but because she's made room for herself again. The pull of your absence, which once felt magnetic and consuming, has softened into something quieter, almost like a distant hum rather than an urgent call. And this quietness gives her clarity. She notices that her mornings feel lighter, her steps more deliberate. She's not walking around anticipating the sound of a message notification or bracing herself for another day of silence. Instead, she's reclaiming simple pleasures, a cup of coffee enjoyed slowly, a walk through her neighborhood where she can actually feel the air on her skin, laughter shared with a friend that is genuine and unshadowed by longing. This is the moment where reflection deepens. She begins to think about emotional intimacy itself, what it means to feel connected to someone, what it means to trust, to show up, to be seen. Your disappearance has taught her that intimacy is not just about closeness, it's about consistency. She recognizes now that emotional availability is not just about warmth in moments of passion or connection, but about reliability in the quiet spaces too, in the days between messages, in pauses that inevitably arise. By day 19, she may feel something close to gratitude. Not necessarily for your absence itself, but for what your absence has revealed about her own capacity to endure, to reflect, to heal. It's ironic, isn't it? Your silence, which may have felt to you like nothing at all, has become a source of profound growth for her. She's not angry that you disappeared. She's grateful that the disappearance showed her who she is when left alone in emotional darkness. She has rediscovered her ability to soothe herself, to honor her emotional truths, to respect her own pace of healing. This period has also helped her differentiate between longing and attachment. In the early days, she longed for you because she missed the emotional intensity you brought into her life. But now she sees that longing and attachment are not always the same. Longing can be beautiful, a reflection of a rich emotional life, but attachment must be earned through care, presence, and reliability. And your absence has taught her that an attachment that can't withstand silence may not be as secure as it once felt. By day 20, her thoughts begin to touch on forgiveness. Not necessarily forgiveness as reconciliation, that would require your return, your words, your presence, but forgiveness as a release of resentment. She doesn't want to carry anger forward. She doesn't want to build walls around her heart. She understands that holding on to bitterness would only rob her of future joy. And so she lets go, little by little, of the questions that have no answers. She releases herself from the endless speculation about your motives, your feelings, your inner world. She knows now that some stories don't get a clean ending. Some stories end with a fade, doubt not a final scene. And she is learning how to live with that ambiguity gracefully, gently, without forcing closure where none is offered. By day 21, she feels stronger, and that strength is quiet, almost invisible on the surface, but deeply felt inside. It's not a defensive strength, not a fortress or a shield, but an embodied strength, the knowledge that she can weather emotional storms without losing herself, that she can love deeply and also survive loss, that she can hope fully and also adapt when reality falls short of hope. And what she thinks about you now is different from what she thought before. You are no longer the one who holds power over her emotional state. You are no longer the one whose actions dictate the tone of her day. You are a chapter in her story, a chapter she is grateful for, perhaps, but one that she has turned the page on. By day 22, she might even look back at the first few days after your disappearance and marvel at how much emotional ground she has covered. She may remember how raw it felt when she realized you weren't coming back quickly, how many times she checked her phone, how vulnerable she felt as she guessed every word she had said to you. And she might smile now, not out of mockery of her own feelings, but out of compassion for that earlier version of herself. She honors the woman she was on day 1, because that woman dared to care, dared to feel, dared to hope. And she honors the woman she is now because this woman has learned to hold herself through it all. There's a dignity in this stage of her process, a quiet self-respect that emanates from the way she carries herself. She doesn't speak of you often anymore, not because you didn't matter, but because she matters more now. She has begun to see that absence itself can be an unexpected form of presence. The presence of her own resilience, her own capacity for growth, her own emotional maturity. If you were to return today, you would not be returning to the same woman who waited breathlessly for your call on day 1. You would be returning to a woman who knows exactly what she needs from a relationship, exactly what kind of consistency she deserves, exactly what kind of emotional intimacy she values. She might listen to you kindly, openly, perhaps even generously, but she would not abandon her newfound clarity just to accommodate your reappearance. And so, as the days stretch onward, she continues living. Living not as someone waiting for you, but as someone embracing the richness of her own life. Her friendships, her passions, her work, her pleasures. The absence you left behind has become a catalyst for self-discovery, not a permanent scar. Her emotional evolution has taught her this simple truth: a relationship is not defined solely by passion or chemistry or even history. It is defined by the consistency of care. And if you could not offer that consistency, then your absence, painful though it was ultimately a gift that showed her what she truly wants and what she will no longer accept. By day 23, something profound has shifted inside her. She no longer defines this experience by your disappearance. She defines it by her own re-emergence. The woman who once waited quietly, rereading your last message and wondering what she could have done differently, is now embracing the beautiful complexity of who she is, sensitive but strong, soft yet grounded, able to love deeply but unwilling to settle for ambiguity. In these later days, her thoughts about you appear less frequently. When they do, they come more like gentle echoes than loud disruptions. Sometimes they arrive when she least expects it, in a moment of stillness, in the middle of an unrelated conversation, in a fleeting memory that catches her breath. But they pass through her now without taking root, without unraveling her peace. What she thinks day by day is no longer fixated on you. The emotional space that your absence once occupied is filling up with other things, her passions, her friendships, her curiosity about life itself. She is exploring again, exploring what makes her laugh, what ignites her creativity, what nourishes her soul. And that exploration is no longer a reaction to your disappearance. It's simply a natural unfolding of her returning to herself. By day 24, if your name crosses her mind, it's accompanied not by longing, but by a quiet kind of gratitude. Not gratitude for the pain, but gratitude for the clarity. Gratitude for the way this chapter helped her see her own needs more clearly. Gratitude for the reminder that she can survive unanswered questions, that she can thrive even in the face of uncertainty. Her emotional world is richer now, not in spite of what happened, but because she allowed herself to feel it all. She didn't rush to numb herself or distract herself or erase you from memory. She honored her process. She let her emotions move through her, and in doing so, she transformed them. By day 25, her sense of self is solid again. Grounded whole, and it's not the same as before. It's wiser, more attuned. She knows now that her heart is tender but not fragile. She knows she can love again, and that next time she will choose more carefully, not because she's cynical, but because she's clearer about what she requires: presence, consistency, care. And here's the beautiful truth: you might think she's forgotten you, but she hasn't. She's integrated you. Your absence is no longer a wound. It's a part of her story, a chapter that's closed naturally, without resentment. When she speaks of you, if she speaks of you, it will be without bitterness, without blame. You will have become simply a memory, a reminder of what happens when presence dissolves into silence. By day 26, her thoughts about herself take precedence over any thoughts about you. She's thinking about what she wants to create, where she wants to travel, what kind of life she wants to build. The emotional energy that was once invested in interpreting your silence is now invested in herself, in nourishing her own joy, honoring her own time, and curating relationships that match the depth of presence she now knows she deserves. And when she sits quietly with herself, maybe at night, maybe in the early morning, there's a serenity that was absent before. The questions that used to swirl in her mind: why did you leave? What did you feel? Was it something she did have quieted, not because they were all answered, but because she no longer needs them? answered to find peace. That is her growth, that is her evolution. You see, by now, her life is no longer a reaction to your disappearance. It is an affirmation of her own presence. Every day that passes strengthens that affirmation. And every choice she makes from this place of clarity reinforces her dignity, her self-worth, her emotional maturity. If you were to reach out at this point, if you were to break the silence, she would listen, but her response would be different. She would listen not with desperation or eagerness, but with calm detachment and quiet wisdom. She would not rush to explain or apologize or fill in the blanks. She would allow you to speak, but she would be discerning about what your words mean to her now, because the woman you left behind on day one is not the woman you would encounter today. This woman has journeyed through the landscape of absence and emerged on the other side, not untouched, but stronger for the touching. More discerning, more grounded, more whole, her love, if it comes again, whether for you or for someone else, will be offered from this place of wholeness. Not from a need to fill a void, but from a desire to share abundance, and that is the ultimate transformation that absence has created in her life. By day 27 and every day after that, what she thinks about you matters less than what she thinks about herself. Her gaze is forward now. Her heart is open, not for you specifically, but for life itself. And in that openness, she carries all of the lessons she learned from your silence, not as a burden, but as a quiet source of wisdom. She knows now that she can survive the unanswered questions. She can hold space for longing without needing to act on it. She can grieve and heal and still live with an open heart, and that, in the end, is the real story of what she thinks day by day after you disappear. It is not a story about you at all. It's a story about her own return to herself.